Hi.
Hello again. We're on page 683 of In Search of Christian Freedom. Ray Franz is discussing the forms, that is, the offices and arrangements of early Christianity, and its relative informality compared to what Jehovah's Witnesses are used to. And this subhead is a dynamic arrangement, not a static one. Another factor that bears on our understanding is the principle set out at Ephesians 4:11-16. It states that the services rendered by individuals within the congregations, including those provided by apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, and teachers, were all designed to bring people to a goal. As we have seen, the goal was not for them to remain childlike, needing others to teach and shepherd them, but for them to grow up in every way into Him who is the head, into Christ. And that's from Ephesians 4:11-16 in the New Revised Standard Version. The passage of time should lessen their need of others to render such services and should increase their own ability to act as grown, mature persons who are not constantly dependent on others. In the letter to the Hebrews, the writer reproves those he addresses, saying, "By this time you should be teaching others." That's Hebrews 5:12-14 in the New American Bible.
Any religious system that perpetuates the dependence of its members on the services of certain men is working against the goal set forth. Not that every person is expected to develop to become like every other person, having the identical abilities or gifts in identical measure, but all should become adult Christians, mature in understanding and in the ability to live a Christian life, to make mature decisions that are their own, not those of someone else. They should all be functioning members of the body of Christ, not just receiving the services of other members, but each contributing a valuable and beneficial service himself or herself. That is the picture conveyed to us in the Christian scriptures.
Instead of continuing in constant need of shepherding service by others, they are to gain strengths so as to be able to go themselves to the aid of others. Not to some church officials or organizational leaders, but to the Christians. In Galatia, generally, Paul writes, quote, "My brothers, if someone is detected in sin, you who live by the Spirit should gently set him right, each of you trying to avoid falling into temptation himself. Help carry one another's burdens. In that way you will fulfill the law of Christ." That's Galatians 6:1-2 in the New American Bible. Then Ray says, discussing this exhortation, one commentary states, and this is John Stott, by the way, in his commentary on Galatians, quote, "It is very impressive that to love one another, bear one another's burdens, and fulfill the law are three equivalent expressions. It shows that to love one another, as Christ loved us, may lead us not to some heroic, spectacular deed of self-sacrifice, but to the much more mundane and unspectacular ministry of burden-bearing. When we see a woman or a child or an elderly person carrying a heavy case, do we not offer to carry it for them? So when we see somebody with a heavy burden on his heart or mind, we must be ready to get alongside him and share his burden. Similarly, we must be humble enough to let others share ours. To be a burden bearer is a great ministry. It is something that every Christian should and can do. It is a natural consequence of walking by the Spirit. It fulfills the law of Christ.
That was very nicely put, John Stott. So that was from John Stott's book, Only One Way, The Message of Galatians. And then he refers to another one here. In Paul's Idea of Community, by Robert Banks, correspondingly points out that in the apostles' letters to the Ephesians, Philippians, and Colossians, Paul always addresses the whole community. Nowhere in these letters does he entrust special responsibilities to any single group vis-a-vis the remainder. He adds, pastoral responsibility can never remain the preserve of a select few, but always exists as an obligation upon every member of the community, even if some have a more advantageous position or a greater gift for it, and so can devote themselves more energetically to the task.
I'm very encouraged to see at the end of Ray's decade of thinking about his leaving the Watchtower, he was getting into people like Robert Banks and John Stott very heavily, and using Christian tools that were available and still are available to all of us. I don't know whether or not he made his peace with Christendom, but I can see he used the tools frequently that Christendom provides. John Stott, by the way, like Banks, is an Anglican clergyman. So we wanted to link two videos we've done on John Stott. One, how do you know you're a Christian? And in his book, Authentic Christianity, John Stott takes that point on directly.
And the second one was what Christ thinks of the church.
About Revelation, the first 3 chapters, the 7 churches. The next subhead in Ray is emphasis on service and function, not office and position.
For next time.